Hi everybody, it's Stephanie. Well, this is a video on Johnny Carson, one of the long-running hosts of The Tonight Show. He hosted it for 30 years. In 1969, he was interviewed, and this is that interview. It was for a book, and you could hear some of the background kind of analog noise because this was done on a different kind of format back in 1969. It's really interesting. It's very clear. You can understand everything. It is so wonderful hearing Johnny Carson's voice. If you were a fan of Johnny Carson and watched The Tonight Show back in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, I think the very beginning of the early 1990s, you watched Johnny Carson, you probably loved him. Most people probably did. Some of the topics covered are comedy magic, writing jokes, the entertainer, likability, ad-libbing, technique. You know, there's several things. There's 19 things listed, and when I was listening to this DVD, it was really insightful and interesting, and it's wonderful to hear Johnny Carson's voice. And there's references to much older comedians that were popular, like in the 1930s and 40s. He mentions vaudeville, which I know a lot of people now like. What's vaudeville? It was like live entertainment on stage, and they had a lot of different performers, sort of like, I think when you go to a concert and you see a singer, but meanwhile there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. It's my opinion, my opinion personally, that what goes on in concerts now with all the dancing, and maybe there's, you know, light shows, and maybe there's videos and all, is sort of the modern version of vaudeville, because they had different acts and there's a variety of things going on. It was all live actors, so forth. Anyways, Johnny Carson talks about the likability of the person themselves, separate from their comedy and everything else, and acceptance. And he talks about the fact that if you can't accept the person, or you don't like them, then they won't have a long-lasting career, or they may have a long-lasting career, but they won't get beyond a certain plateau. They won't become really big. Which I thought was like really interesting and insightful. Maybe you don't think much about that, or maybe you do. Anyways, so that really stood out, and it mentions ego. So he talks about entertainers. You have to have at least some kind of ego that needs to be fulfilled to be, you know, into entertaining. I guess that just makes sense. Maybe some people go overboard. I guess it could also be applied to politics, like, because you are in the public eye, supposedly serving the public, although, you know, like, that's questionable. You're serving someone, we don't know if it's the public. But anyways, that has nothing to do with this DVD. It's an interview with Johnny Carson back in 1969 or 68. I'll have to check that. I highly recommend it if you like Johnny Carson and you're interested in Johnny Carson's insights into comedy and comedians. Of course, he made the careers of many comedians, such as the ones that come to mind off the top of my head are Jerry Seinfeld and Louis Anderson, who lives in Las Vegas. Hey, or he used to live in Las Vegas, or he part-time lives in Las Vegas. Hi, Louis. Love to interview you. It's a little bit emotional for me because, you know, back in the day, live comedy was a lot more accessible. Not very often you're going to see a comedian's career launched on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. I know he's funny. He was on Saturday Night Live, and I'm sure he's worked with a lot of comedians that did get their start on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Jimmy Fallon could launch some other comedians' careers like others were launched with Johnny Carson? Catapult them into stardom by giving them a chance on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. That would be wonderful. Anyway, so this is a 1969 interview with Johnny Carson, and check out laugh.com. There are a lot of interviews. Here's my readers. Woody Allen, Jack Benny, Milton Berle. Cool. Shelley Berman. Shelley Berman is actually from Chicago, and my grandfather, Al Fisher, whose nickname was Bongo, played baseball in the streets with Shelley Berman, along with a whole lot of other Chicago neighborhood kids in the area west side. And Shelley Berman, as of February 2017, still very much alive. My grandfather died in 2004. Hey, Shelley Berman. Let's see, let me get my readers on. Some other people interviewed on laugh.com. Joy Bishop, George Burns, who lived to be about, I think, 100 or 101. Johnny Carson, as you know, here he is. Maurice Chevalier, Bob Hope and Phyllis Diller, real trailblazer. Jimmy Durante, Dick Gregory, George Jessel, Jerry Lewis, still very much alive, Jerry Seinfeld, Danny Thomas, and Ed Wynn, not related to the Wynn of the hotels in Las Vegas. Danny Thomas, his daughter's Marlo Thomas, still married to Phil Donahue. Phil Donahue did a long time running show in Chicago, the Phil Donahue Show, till he was knocked down completely in like one day by Oprah. Anyways, little side note there. So Johnny Carson is really funny. It's a comedy interview with Johnny Carson from The Tonight Show. This was done in Johnny Carson's home, this interview. Well, if you like this video, please comment below, like the video, comment below about your favorite comedian or DVDs you've listened to that are really funny, especially comedy videos, comedy DVDs, and what you think about Johnny Carson or any other past or the current host of The Tonight Show or any other comedian. Thank you again for watching. My name is Stephanie. See you next time.